Welcome to XYPN Radio, where your host Alan Moore brings you into a community of fee-only financial planners who want to profitably and successfully serve Gen X and Gen Y clients. If you're ready to get the knowledge you need from leaders in your field, learn from forward-thinking advisors, and take action on your own goals, XYPN Radio is the show for you. Here's your host.
Hello and welcome to this episode of XYPN Radio. I'm your host, Alan Moore, and I'm excited to have XYPN member Alyssa Lum, founder of Luminate Financial Planning, on the show today. Alyssa has always been a finance nerd, and after getting her MBA, spent some time in the corporate financial projection team at Continental Airlines. She realized that while it was a lot of fun, it wasn't an ideal job for her to start a family, and made a financial plan for her and her husband that showed she could take time away from her career to stay at home for a couple of years. That led her to researching and finding the career of financial planning. After getting her CFP, she worked part-time at a couple of fee-based financial planning firms to gain valuable experience, both in how to run a firm and to get her CFP designation. We talked about how firm owners can be flexible in terms of hiring advisors and staff that are part-time and how to leverage their skill sets from employees you wouldn't normally be able to hire because traditional 9-to-5s just don't work for their lifestyle. Alyssa specializes in working with families with college-bound children. And she talked about how she's tried using one-time college plans to feed prospects into her ongoing financial planning service and the challenges she has faced there and what she's learned. She's worked with 43 clients since opening her doors in August 2017, with 13 of those currently as ongoing clients. So she was able to share what's working for her from a marketing perspective, the niche she's carved out, and what she has learned from working with so many different clients. How much money do you need to launch your own firm? That's a question we've got at XY Planning Network hundreds, if not thousands of times. To answer it once and for all, we developed a free budget template that accounts for the many variables of your first year in business. Along with the template, successful XYPN members opened their books for us and shared how they did it, what they spent, and what they do differently. Our first year budget download is an incredibly valuable resource for anyone considering launching a firm of their own. Download it for free at www.xyplanningnetwork.com/budget. You can find any of the additional resources that we mentioned during the episode at xyplanningnetwork.com/186. Also, be sure to go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to join our private group just for XYPN Radio listeners. It's the community of advisors we've all been looking for that's there to provide support when we need it the most. Best of all, it's free. I encourage you to check it out. Again, that's xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP. Without further ado, here's my interview with Alyssa. Hey, Alyssa, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being on.
Hi, Ellen. Thanks for having me.
So for listeners' benefit, can you give me just sort of a quick overview of you and your practice, where you're located, how many clients you have, maybe when you started the firm, and then we'll dig into the details.
Sure. Well, I am located outside of Washington, D.C. in the suburbs at Sterling, Virginia. I started my firm and got registered at the end of August of 2017.
So it's been about a year, just almost a year and a half.
Yeah, a year and 4 months, I guess we'll call it.
Okay.
If you want to call it a niche, I do serve mostly families with college-bound kids. I took the Joe Messenger course and did all of his classes and marketing and have kind of followed his model in most ways. That fits my family. I happen to have 3 kids who are 16, 14, and 12, and many people in my own personal network are in a similar situation. So that's worked out really well just to kind of focus in on families and families with college-bound kids, basically.
Okay. And then how many clients do you currently have?
So that's a tricky question. I've had a lot of one-time clients. So I did all the math here. I've had 43 one-time clients of one way or another since opening my firm.
Okay.
And that's a combination of, especially in the early days, I did some project work. I did quick start plans. I did like college funding plans, and then also just full comprehensive plans. So 43 clients since opening my doors. 13 of those are ongoing. So 13 are either AUM or monthly retainer fee.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we'll definitely dig into sort of how you've structured that and what you've learned, because that'll be really interesting.
Yep.
So I guess, when did you start your career in financial planning? Was this what you always planned to do with your career?
This is not always what I planned to do. But I do have to admit, I've been a personal finance nerd and interested in investing for a long, long time. So even in high school, my dad taught me about the stock market, and he had me just investing in a couple of small mutual funds even in high school. And so I always had an interest, but I didn't think there was any way to make a living doing that besides being like a stockbroker, which I did not want to do. So I majored in business, majored in marketing as an undergrad. And then after a couple of years of working, went back and got an MBA in finance because I still loved finance. I still loved investing, although I still wasn't sure exactly how I would make a living doing that. So got my MBA and then ended up working in the field of corporate finance. I took a position with Continental Airlines, and I was in basically their long range planning group of like corporate finance. And we spent all of our time basically building giant Excel models to project forward like the company's financials, right? So,
sure.
What's it going to look like in 1 year and 5 years and 10 years? And then building what if scenarios, what if we expand into this territory? What if we build another terminal? What if we merge with another airline? So kind of really digging into the numbers on all that stuff and doing planning.
The jobs no one told us about when we were kids, right?
Right.
I just love, we know about, doctors, lawyers, and vets, but it's just like, I'm sure Continental needed an army of people on the financial projections to make good decisions, but who knew that was even a career?
Absolutely. I sure didn't. But it was a lot of fun and it was really intense. And it got me thinking a lot about, well, if I can project financials for a company, then I bet I could do that for myself, right? So I literally built my own Excel spreadsheet for my own life based on the same spreadsheets that I was doing for Continental, right? So I did like a 1 year, 5 year, and this is a true story, is I dragged that out 72 years. I was 28. I was 28 years old at the time. My husband was also 28 at the time. And I said, look, honey, I built us a 72-year plan. It takes us to 100. Here's what it's going to look like. And I just put in projections for market returns, for income, for expenses, and built what I now see was a financial plan. At the time, I didn't know what it was, except that it was our 72-year plan for our lives. So anyway, the main reason I did that, or at least one of the reasons, is we were starting to think about having kids. And as much as I loved the job in corporate finance, it was intense and it was long hours. And, when the CFO wanted us to run a new scenario, that's what we did. And it didn't matter if it was a Friday night or, Saturday morning or whatever. And I started thinking that that's probably not going to be compatible with the vision I had of having young kids and working in a job like that. And so in the 72-year plan, I said, well, what would happen if I took a couple years off of work, and could we do that? And so kind of ran that plan to see, would that all work? And we decided it would. And so we did. I got pregnant and I quit my job, but based on the plan that I built. So I always say that I really, truly believe in the power of financial planning, because I built a plan. It allowed us to see what we could do and, make sure that we weren't overspending. And it did allow me to stay home with my kids while they were young, which was pretty great. So.
Yeah. And it's just funny to me, so many people sort of discovered financial planning on their own. They almost built financial planning, and then they're like, oh, this career, I could do this for other people. Who
exactly.
knew?
Right. Yeah.
Just because it's so not a well-known profession yet amongst young people. Obviously that is getting better. But I think it's really cool that there's no better way to understand financial planning than to be in the client's seat and really be able to see, in your instance, being able to accomplish this huge goal of being able to stay home with the kids, which is so difficult in this day and age, just from a financial perspective and making that commitment. And to be able to see and to be able to make a plan that says, actually, I can do this and this is how I'm going to do it. And then it work, and now you've seen the power of what we do for our clients. Most of our clients just don't take the time and don't have the energy or the expertise to sit down and do that for themselves. So,
right. Nope, absolutely. And yeah, that was huge for me. And, I do tell my clients that story because it's true.
Yeah.
And it was powerful and it was transformative for sure.
So you took a few years off, stayed home, and then I say a few years off, you took on the harder job of staying home, I have seen. And so what was sort of then the progression for you? When did you start thinking about coming back into the workforce?
Yeah. So, pretty early on, I was still doing a lot of investing and, reading about investments. And I started reading about, that's when I began to realize that there was a career out there called financial planning. And I started seeing Cheryl Garrett and the Garrett Planning Network was just starting to get a lot of press. This is a while back. And that's when I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to be a fee-only planner, hourly planning, helping just middle-class people. I love that whole idea. And that's when I started realizing, well, I better get my CFP. So while I was home with the kids, I took all the CFP courses that you need to take, and then I did that slowly over time. I was not on the fast track. I did it, one course per year,
right,
over time. And during that time, I was really active in the community and just with various. Basically, if you mention that you have a background in finance, then immediately you become either the treasurer or the finance committee chair or for any nonprofit that you're associated with. So, so between like the PTA and the Moms Club and church and organizations like that, I was pretty active as the finance person for those groups. So anyway, so I took the courses, sat for the CFP exam in 2013 and passed it. And of course I didn't have any experience at all. Right around then, I knew someone who worked for a Raymond James independent broker-dealer in our area. And she mentioned that I should apply for a position there, which I did, and it worked out great. So it was an independent broker-dealer, fairly large office for an independent group, but they really put a strong emphasis on hiring CFPs, which was great, and training CFPs, which was great. So that was kind of how I got my foot in the door and started to get experience to go with the test that I had just passed.
Okay.
And it was a lot of operations. It was not glamorous work. It was opening accounts and, ACATs and NIGOs and, just how to even use a CRM and how to talk to clients and a little bit of planning, a little bit of investing, although probably more operations is what I learned there.
Right. Okay. And how did that compare to, I guess, what you thought you were going to be doing?
I kind of knew, I was probably wished and hoped I'd been doing a little bit more planning, but they didn't, they were honest about what I'd be doing and they were right. I was doing a lot of account opening and paperwork and that kind of stuff. So,
which is it's boring, but it is really important to know. And, I started my firm. I had never done any of that work. I'd always been in a firm that had a couple of people and most of the firms I worked at either had like had an investment focused person or admin, and they just handled all that. And so I remember the first time I sat down to open an account and was like, what the heck?
Right.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And screwed it up a couple times because,
of course, yeah.
Didn't quite get where I need to be. So anyway, so that while not the most glamorous of times, potentially definitely valuable.
Absolutely. I am very grateful for that time just because just ACATs and all the terminology and opening accounts and all the things that you can screw up. I'm glad I learned before I started my own firm, and it's made that at least I feel comfortable with all of that part of the business for sure. So,
yeah, I would say that's probably one of the areas we see advisors be less comfortable. Usually they're very comfortable doing the planning. Some of the stuff around operations can be a bit fuzzy and they learn it. And then obviously the, compliance ops and, bookkeeping, the true run the business stuff is usually where they're like, okay, I need someone else to do this for me, which is a lot of what XY now offers. But it is an area where I do see a difference with folks that have worked in those positions in terms of comfort level and just overall confidence to be able to say, yes, this is how an ACAT works. And no, I can't get you your money today.
Exactly.
Because we've all made a commitment we couldn't fulfill. Fortunately, I watched other people make some of those commitments and was able to learn that, you can't liquidate that fast. So anyway,
right. Absolutely.
One of those fun things. But so how long were you at the broker dealer then?
So I was at the Raymond James independent broker dealer for about a year and a half. And then just through another connection, I moved over to a Wells Fargo independent broker dealer. And I made that move because this was instead of for a kind of a larger firm, this was one advisor. At the time, he had me and another person as his support staff. Eventually, it was just me and the advisor. And it was more of a chance to do a little bit more planning for sure. He used his own investment models that I helped him build. So I got to build investment models, do a lot of the actual trades and the rebalancing and run plans for clients and because it was a small office, really doing almost everything, communicating with the clients and all the compliance and the investments and everything. So So
Okay.
I did that.
So you made that transition. So how long were you at Wells Fargo then?
So then I was there for, it was just about 2.5 years. So I was looking to get my 3 years of full-time experience so that I could call myself an actual CFP.
Yep.
And in both of those firms, they were kind enough to let me work part-time. So in both those firms, I was working more like 30 hours a week, not 40. So it took me about 4 years to get my 3 years worth of full-time experience.
Okay. And was the 30 hours a week just a family dynamic, like just didn't want to be working 40 hours a week at that point?
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. Yeah, it was just with kids in the house and driving around, and I was trying hard to keep those hours under 30, which worked out pretty well.
Okay. Yeah. And how do you feel like firms, especially those that are hiring, can help facilitate unique schedules like that? We generally think of like part-time being, 5 hours of outsourced virtual work, or we have full-time people, but there's so many people, potential folks in the workforce that need that, 20 to 30 hour a week, a little bit more flexible of a schedule. And just how were they able to accommodate that with you, maybe in a way that some of our advisors listening could help accommodate a schedule for someone who needs a non 40 hour 9 to 5 type schedule? Right.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like there's so many people out there and for whom like just 40 hours or working until 6 every day is really hard if both parents are working and you've got kids who need to be places and everything else. So it helped me. Like I was really looking to be like, I'm like, look, I can start early, but I really need to be home usually by 4:30. Fortunately, the markets close at 4. And in both firms that I worked at, it was kind of like you have to be there till 4 in case clients call and need to, place a trade or something. But in both cases, they were pretty flexible in understanding that I had to be out the door pretty soon after that. And of course, there were times when I had to stay, and there were times when I had to call in from home to finish things. But they were flexible about that. I mean, the truth is, in both those cases, the reason I got the job is because I knew someone, and that helped. I think it's a lot harder to get a part-time position like that just coming right off the street if they don't know you. In both cases, like I said, I had a connection, which helped me then say like, hey, here are my terms. So,
well, and my experience has been folks working in that 25 to 30 hour a week range sometimes get just as much work done, actual production wise, as folks that work 40 hours, because none of us sit down and work from 9 to 5 fully productive. And there are a lot of people out there that can come in and work really hard and produce a lot and go home. And, then I guess then there's the question of how do you compensate that person if they're doing a full-time person's job in 30 hours, but I guess a separate piece. But I encourage firm owners and business owners to be flexible and be open to some flexible type schedules. I personally have a bias towards full-time team members in the sense that they don't have another job, because I have found that sometimes when you have that other job, I want to be sure people are solving my problems if I'm paying a salary. But that doesn't mean that they can only be working 40, 45 hours a week. Like there's some flexibility there. And like I said, you can tap into someone who has an MBA and a lot of work experience and has been a mom, and so like someone that you may not have been able to get otherwise, that you open the door up to because you're willing to be flexible.
Yep. No, I think there's a lot of probably talent out there that isn't being used for people who can't think outside of, a 9 to 5 or 8 to 6 kind of job. So.
8 to 6. I like that. 9 to 5,
yeah, that feels kind of pretty normal out there. But yeah.
Whatever.
Yep.
So I guess when did you spent, it sounds like 4 or 5 years in these different broker dealers, working your way through, working towards a CFP. When did the idea of starting your own firm really start to solidify as, I guess, when did it start as like an idea, and when did it really start to solidify for you?
Yeah. I mean, so the idea was there the whole time, I should say. Like I even contemplated just starting my firm with the Garrett Planning Network, before, like right when I passed my CFP exam. So I definitely knew that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to do fee only planning. But in the end, I decided that I also really needed to get experience and learn the business working for other people. So in the back of my mind that whole time, I was probably going to start my own firm. I did contemplate staying at either one of those places. I could have had a good career. I did definitely think about that. But in the end, the call to do planning the way I want to do it, to do investing the way I want to do it, to answer to no one but my clients, it was too much. And once I finally got that CFP certification, something just switched in me and I'm like, I'm ready, ready to do this. So,
yeah. And I think a lot of our now members or a lot of listeners are dealing with this of like, they know one day they want to start a firm. And I'll admit, I made the mistake of, I tend to always think in the future and quite honestly struggle to only think about the present. Like I'm always thinking ahead. And so it made it difficult for me to work in an environment, in a job, because I had a tough time staying focused because I was always thinking about my firm and what I wanted to be doing, which really wasn't fair to my employer. So how did you manage to stay focused on doing the work you need to be doing? You were extremely busy, with 3 young kids and working part-time. So how do you do all that and also be fair and just to them and just stay focused?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely treated all of it like a training ground for, I was always thinking, how would I do this if this were my own client, if I were on my own? I hope I know I still did do a good job for both of them and treated the clients as I would want them to be treated. But I did treat all of it like a training, like paid training for what I would eventually do on my own. So, but I also wanted to, I wanted to be successful. I wanted to learn all that I could. And so I was pretty eager to jump into almost any project or client situation because I knew I would be someday facing that myself. So,
okay. So when did you start seeing the light at the end of the tunnel? When did starting a firm actually become a reality that you started making plans beyond just dreaming?
It's funny. I mean, it was almost as soon as I realized I had those hours in the CFP and I started doing the calculation. So that was early 2017. Make sure I got my years right there. Once I realized I had my CFP certification, I actually started just contacting a bunch of still thought I'd probably go Garrett Planning Network. And I started reaching out to a lot of the Garrett planners in the DC area and had coffee with a bunch of them and had phone calls with a bunch of them. And they were great. They were all super helpful. But the impression I was getting was not, I just, most of them were like, yeah, I'm making a living. Yeah, it's possible. Now you're always going to have to find clients because it's hourly. And one of them said, you should probably look at the XY Planning Network, which I hadn't until then, hadn't really looked at. So it was a Garrett planner who told me to check out XY Planning Network. And I did. And I started reading all that I could about XY planning and started listening to the podcast and pretty soon realized that the XY Planning Network would be a much better fit for me than the Garrett Planning Network. So even though my plan all along was probably to be a Garrett planner, then I switched the last minute and ended up going XY Planning. So that was, I think I joined XY in probably like May of 2017 and then got fully registered that August of 2017. So.
Okay. So it sounds like getting the CFP, having the designation, that was sort of the turning point for you.
It really was. And I thought it wouldn't be. I thought, I'll probably work another year. This is pretty comfortable. And then I don't know, something happened in my head. I was like, you know what? I could do this. So, so pretty soon after I got it, that's when I did. And then I gave my employer 3 months notice because it was just the two of us. And I just didn't want to leave him high and dry. So I helped recruit my replacement and I helped train my replacement before I left. So.
Fantastic. And they let you stay on for that full 3 months?
Yep. Yeah. That was no problem. I mean, I had brought one client in myself because it was a friend, but beyond that, the clients were really, while I was doing the planning and the investing, the clients were his clients. And I think that was pretty clear. And I'd signed plenty of paperwork saying that I couldn't take any clients with me. So he didn't have any problem letting me stay. In fact, he wanted me to stay, of course, longer than I could. But at some point, once you start in the registration process, I had to cut ties there.
Yeah, and you start checking out a little bit, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
That's all you can think about is all the things that you've got to get done. Because starting a firm's tough. There's a lot of steps that you have to go through, and especially if you don't want to be working 100-hour weeks trying to get that done. It's great to have that transition time and to be fair to your employer and have the income, but also recognizing it limits the amount of time that you have. So you launched in August 2017. So is that when you were no longer working for the other firm, sort of everything phased out by then?
Yep.
So tell me about that first, I don't know why, but we all think in terms of calendar years, right? Like we always think like in terms of like August to the end of the year, the first. Yep. And just tell me about that experience and what that was like for you.
Yeah. I mean, I was fortunate in that right from the get-go, I think because I'd been involved in so many groups, there were a couple people who, before I even registered, said they knew my plans and they said, hey, let us know as soon as you get registered, we want to be your first client. So I had two people who both, quote, wanted to be my first clients. And so they were both, one ended up being an ongoing client and one was just, well, actually they both ended up, one's more of a monthly and one is an AUM client. But so right from the get-go, I had two, which was helpful. And also within a month or two, I definitely started getting people who reach out to me through my website. So, and the first time that ever happened, I literally thought one of my friends was like pranking me. And I'm like, this cannot be a real person. There's no way this person came through the website and wants to set up a meeting with me. But it was. And so in those first couple months, I had two clients who found me just through the website, either through XY or just, other sources. And then I had a couple like friends and family. So those first 4 months, I did make like $6,700, and of course, then spent way more than that in those first 4 months.
Exactly.
So so it was a big loss for 2017.
Yeah. What was do you know your revenue and expenses for the year? So you said 6,700 in revenue.
Yeah, and then I spent about 13,500 in that first year, basically the first 4 months.
Okay. So 13,500. I mean, I know people that start a restaurant that, they spend that much money on an oven. So in the grand scheme of things, it was a losing year in terms of, that you spent more than you made, but 13,000 just seems like not a lot to start a business. So where did that money go? Was it obviously had some XYPN fees? What were some of the other big expenses that you had early on? Yeah.
I mean, some of mine were, I should have looked this up. Definitely, I went to the XYPN conference and spent a bit on between the conference and the travel and all of that. I did all the Joe Messenger classes, so actually I spent I think a few thousand for sure, like doing his courses and all that training. Yeah, then the XY planning and I don't even know what else. Just kind of the business website. Although I did the website myself, but there were just still a lot of lots of one-off expenses in those first 4 months for sure.
So it sounds like you didn't bring any clients with you from the broker-dealer, but you did have sort of a few people out there that had wanted to work with you. I'm curious, why hadn't you worked with them before? Was it that you weren't in an advisor position to do so? Yeah, well, it's funny. Several people, while I was at either one of these advisors, had said, hey, can we work with you? And I mean, with no disrespect to either of those advisors, it wasn't fee only. So it was a little bit more, it was fee based. So some was commission, some was fee planning, but there was no actual just planning. And it wasn't the kind of planning and investing that I would do for those clients. So in both those cases, I basically said, if you can wait, hopefully in the next 5 years, I'm starting my own firm, or I can point you towards some fee only planner. So I kind of, and some of those, a few of them, actually, at least one of them went to a different advisor because they couldn't wait, which was fine. I understood that. So before we move on, you knew the world of fee only planning before you got into this career because you had been watching Garrett, you knew about the different models, and yet, you went and worked at a fee-based firm. And I get this question all the time. Yeah. I don't have a fee only firm near me. Should I just start my own firm? And so I'm curious what your experience was knowing the world of fee only, preferring that model, but working inside of a different one. Were you able to, do you feel like it was a valuable enough experience that you're glad you did it and would recommend others take that path to learn before starting their own firm? Yeah. I mean, in a perfect world, I would have found a fee only firm. And I did try, but I think because I was coming in really just wanting a part-time position, it's even harder to find a fee only part-time position near my home. So that wasn't going to happen for me. It's still valuable. I mean, we can argue about how you get paid. These advisors were still doing good work and they were still putting their, the client's interests ahead of their own. I still learned a ton about the business. Even if I was a little bit conflicted in that's how I wouldn't run my own firm. So it was a good learning. It helped me understand a whole lot about all of the aspects of the business. Yeah. I mean, I don't think I could have started my firm without that experience. I assume I could have, but it would have been much, much harder. Right. So having any experience
doing investing and planning and working for advisors and sitting in on meetings is helpful.
Well, that is usually the direction I push people. So always nice to get confirmation bias. No, I know everyone has their own path and you have to walk your own path. And all we can do on this show is share different people's paths and different people's opinions. But, experience is valuable. Even if you consider it bad experience, I think it can still be extremely valuable. So that is the direction I push folks, especially if you can get into a firm, a Raymond James or a Mass Mutual or something that is actually doing some financial planning, even if it's not the bulk of your job. Just be able to see the conversations. I think that's the most valuable piece. In addition to ops and what you can learn, the lingo and all that, like just seeing the conversations that happen between advisors and their clients and navigating those conversations is just so valuable that it's worth seeing it. So
yeah, I 100%. Yeah. And I remember being pretty surprised at sitting in some of those meetings. And I'm like, we didn't even get to the financial part of that meeting until 30 minutes in. And that's because it's a relationship. And, you're talking about what's happening in the client's lives, not directly what's happening in their investments all the time. So
absolutely. So got your firm launched. We're able to bring in a few clients in that first year. Talk to me about going into then that'll be 2018. So that's this year. You said early on you had 43 clients. So you added a bunch of clients this year. So how are those clients finding you? And then I want to dig into some of the service model stuff that you talked about. So it sounds like you've tried a few different things. But first off, how are these clients finding you? Because that is a bunch of folks in 1 year.
Yes. Well, I listed it out because I knew you were going to ask that. So I was fortunate. So 15 of those clients were I'll call it from my personal network. Somebody, people who know me in some way through PTA or church or mom's club or something like that. So that was very helpful.
That's fantastic. That's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's almost none of them were close friends, but it was people who, I knew in some way and knew that I was, I think because I built up trust because I'd been, like I said, I'd been the volunteer finance person for many a committee and everything else. And so that was really helpful. And then the rest are, I got 7 people directly through XYPN. A lot of people just come to my website and don't know how they got there.
Right. How did you find me?
Yep. A couple people from NAPA. Yeah. A couple people from Fee Only Network. Referrals then. I've had started to have clients who then referred clients who referred clients. So that's been helpful as well. I've had 7 clients came on as referrals, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah. So a little bit from all over. I mean, obviously the biggest chunk goes from the personal network, but plenty from just all over. I would say most people who find me through my website have done their homework. They want fee only. They usually want like passive investing. And most of them have kids who are like middle school age or maybe high school age. And I should say that I live in the DC suburbs it's expensive to live here, but also the incomes are pretty high. So it's an affluent area. Most of my clients are local or, certainly within like a 25 or 30 minute drive. I do have a handful of clients who I only see virtually, but most of them are local. And it's a densely populated, highly educated population here. So that's, I think, made my job a little bit easier in finding clients.
I mean, it's one of the highest rates of grad school, right? Like it's extremely well-educated area. And a lot of clients do XY. I mean, I wish I could claim that every advisor gets 7 clients a year through the XY site. That would not be accurate. But that is, I mean, we hear that some folks get a lot, some folks get none, but that's on the higher end. So are you noticing any trend in terms of services? Like folks that are coming through the XY site are looking for a certain type of service versus maybe those that are coming from NAPFA or something like that. Any similarities you've noticed?
No, the only thing I will say, the big difference for me would be people who found me through my personal network don't usually know about fee only planning, or so they didn't come to me because I'm a fee only planner. They came to me because they know me and they know that I do financial planning. Whereas almost everybody who finds me online, whether it's through XY or NAPFA or, any of those sources, like I said, they're always looking for fee only planning. They've done their homework. They're asking, they know that I'm a fiduciary and they want to confirm that.
Okay. So Do you notice a difference between folks, like I said, that are coming? So you touched on this already, but folks that are coming to you directly, they probably have a little less information, I guess, than folks that are finding you online. So
Yes.
I guess is that initial conversation, that sales process is a little different in terms of informing them.
Totally different. And I've got my fees on my website. So, I mean, I have found that almost everybody who contacts me online, they've already read my website. They already know my fees. They're pretty much, if they're calling me, it's because they want to become a client and they already know how they want to do that and how much, what the fee would be. So that makes my job easier. By the time they call, they've already looked at my website. They know how I charge. Whereas people coming to me outside of that, most cases haven't even looked at my website and don't know how planners charge. And, it's kind of a different process.
Okay. Yeah, it's really interesting to see. And that's why I'm such a fan of put all the information on your website. I get so frustrated when I can't figure out what someone charges for a service without, the whole want to quote, contact us. I'm like, I'm not going to contact you because all you have to do is tell me it's how much it is.
Right.
So you offer a few different types of services, and looking at your website, it looks like you sort of have it broken down with, it looks like 4 different plans: wealth management plan, wealth building plan, a standalone financial plan, and a college funding plan. Yep. So can you just give me sort of an overview of what are the differences and why you've developed sort of these 4 distinct processes?
Sure. We'll start with the easiest one, which is just that college funding plan, which I'm probably getting away from. And honestly, not too many people just want to do a college funding plan. I got that idea from the Joe Messenger, and just like there are some people who maybe just want to dip their toe in,
sure,
figure out
the intro, get an idea of how you operate, that sort of thing.
Right. So I have done a handful of those, and I've done a lot of, I've done probably 6 or 7 workshops on using Joe's materials, and then kind of pitching that idea of like a college funding plan that with the hopes that it would become like a full plan.
Okay.
I will say that most people who want a college funding plan do not want a full plan. And most people who come to a workshop do not want a full plan. So
they're just really focused. So you're not finding it to be a lead-in for comprehensive planning. It's if that's their pain point, that's their focus.
Yeah, that's what I found so far. Most people who contact me again online almost always have kids who are going to be going to college, and they like that I'm very knowledgeable on how financial aid works and scholarships and 529s. And so they're comfortable with that. So I'm very glad that I have that knowledge and that, focus, I would say, but I haven't found it to be but a way to generate clients outside of just general online advertising, I guess.
Okay. That's really interesting. Like say, conceptually, I can totally see it. They come in, they work with you for a couple hours, you design this awesome plan, and you point out the 74 other things that you could be helping them with, and they sign on for the plan. Like that makes perfect sense. So it's really interesting that, we know people come to us in transition and in pain. No one's just like wakes up one morning excited to talk to a stranger about money, right? Like that just doesn't happen. So something is happening. And in this case, it's almost like it's such an overwhelming pain point that it's all they can think about at that time, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I need to stick with that longer too. And just, it's a numbers game, and I haven't done that long, but it does seem like most people are just focused on, how do I get financial aid for college? How does, how does funding work and that kind of thing. So anyway, that's just kind of the pure college funding plan.
Okay.
The other services that I offer, the easier way to describe it as I would say, like everybody who comes to me now does we start with a comprehensive plan, and that's 3 meetings, 90 minutes each, $2,000 that covers that quote comprehensive plan for the 3 meetings. And at the end of those 3 meetings, for some people, for a lot of people so far, they're like, okay, that's great. We'll contact you in a year. We'll implement this ourselves, and kind of send them on their way. Or at the end of those 3 meetings, some people want to work with me ongoing. And so if you want to work with me ongoing, you can either pay me a monthly fee, and I don't manage the investments, but we do planning. And so I have a smaller number of clients who fall into that bucket, or I can manage your investments and charge an AUM fee, basically. So the way I've set it up is it's almost that comprehensive plan is everyone starts there. And then, of course, I'm hoping that most people then continue ongoing, either monthly fee or me managing their assets.
Yes. So you sort of had the entry point. So we're going to do a comprehensive financial plan. That's what you call a standalone plan, but that's sort of everyone goes through that process pretty much. And then they can opt in for ongoing. So what is the monthly fee so they pay the $2,000 for the upfront fee for the financial plan. And what's the ongoing monthly cost for the wealth building plan?
Yeah. And that's where it's based on complexity, and $200 is the minimum. So I don't have a standard formula. It's more based on, me getting to know their situation. And at $200 a month would probably be your standard plan for most of the clients that I work with. But sometimes, especially if you have two self-employed people and like a few other pieces going on, then I would be charging more like $400 a month.
Okay. Yeah. Is 400 sort of the top end then?
It is, yeah.
Okay. So somewhere between 200 and 400. It sounds like a lot are at that 200 level, but it will range up based on some complexity factors.
Yep.
Yeah. And I find that this, it's all in how you sell it, right? And like many of us, and I was the same way. I very much approached it as like, here's the plan. If you want to go implement it yourself, you can. Hire me for the ongoing if you want. And really what that does is it just sets your clients to circle back in 1 to 2 years because they realize they haven't actually implemented any of the plan.
Yep.
And that's when they sign up for ongoing. So, I'm sure there's a way to communicate better to the clients to say, look, like you're welcome to go do this on your own. I find that most clients circle back in a year. They haven't done anything. So like, I'd love to work with you just to go ahead and be sure we get it implemented. But, time will tell just based on the types of clients that are coming to you and what their pain points are, really what that works.
Right. Yeah. I worked a little bit with Nancy Blakey. I didn't do her full course, but I did do some of her smaller offerings. Sure. And she has helped me a lot in that almost everybody who comes to me through the website, right away, they're like, we just want the standalone plan. We can implement ourselves, let's do that. And so I kind of took that to be like, okay, I'm not even going to suggest ongoing planning. We'll just do a plan, send them on their way. And she kind of was like, no. You can still talk about the benefits of ongoing planning. You can do it in a nice way. I didn't want to be pushy, but she sort of taught me that like now as we go through our 3 meetings in the comprehensive plan, throughout those meetings, I talk about the value of ongoing planning. Not saying that they have to do that, but I talk a lot more about the value and what it would look like and all of that. And that certainly has helped a lot in the second half of the year when I started doing that. I'm getting more people who want to do ongoing planning. And Nancy also had me set up. I basically now have a template of emails that I send out, 2 months and then 6 months and then 12 months after the plan is done. That's something, says something along the lines of, I just wanted to check in and see how things are going. If you found that you haven't actually implemented everything we talked about, despite your best intentions, you're in good company. Lots of people find themselves in that situation. Let me know if you want to talk again. And that did get one person so far to then say, actually, I do want to do ongoing planning. So, and I just started doing that in the last, 4 or 5 months. So,
okay. Time will tell how that sort of shakes out.
Yeah. And I will say a couple of my best clients had done a one-time plan with someone else a couple of years ago, or in one case, like 10 years ago, and never implemented it. So when they came to me, they were like, oh, we're doing ongoing planning because we already did it once and did nothing. So I was like, I need more clients like that. Who did a one-time plan with someone else, realized it's not, it's better to do ongoing. And so they were both like ongoing from the beginning.
Or not to dip into business coaching mode, but I wonder about like upping the fee for ongoing planning and including the first year, where it's like, we're going to do the financial plan and 6 months or 12 months of ongoing check-ins to get them through the implementation phase so that they see the power of it. Because it's not like once they see it and once they see that it's not just about implementing the recommendations, it's also all the updates that are happening and all the ongoing conversations, like, I don't know, charging $3,000 and including the first 6 months, so I don't know, something like that.
I have thought about that and may still do that. I think probably like most XY planners, I've changed my mind 5 or 6 times already on how I want to charge. And I like the idea of doing like a higher fee, full 1 year or full 6 months, and then seeing how that goes.
Yeah, it's one of the fun things about being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And part of what makes XY unique, everyone's always trying to figure out what XY Planning Network is, and how it compares. Is it a broker dealer? Is it just a membership association? And, we're very much in the middle. But that's one of the things is that we tend to attract advisors who want to play a little bit with these things because there is no answer. There's no right way. We like to say, tell me your niche market and I'll tell you the answer. And that's true to a point. But even then, even with a very specific target market, there's still no right way to charge. You need to be compensated fairly for your time. They need to be paying a fee commensurate with the value that they're getting, but a fee they're willing to pay. And you sort of have to feel it out. And it's also sort of like, what do you believe in? What can you sell? You may believe a net worth income calculation is the greatest way in the history of fee structures to be on the same side of the table with your client. Great. If you can sell it, if you think it's a dumb fee model and you want to do flat fee, do that.
Right. So no, absolutely. Yeah.
It's probably one of the frustrating things for advisors as they're getting started, but also one of the fun things I think is the independence to be able to make some of those decisions and see what works, see what sells well, and just sort of iterate over time until you really find your sweet spot.
Yeah, absolutely. I've changed my mind a couple times for sure and have changed things. And I think one thing for sure is by offering just a standalone plan as an option, that's why I do get a lot of people who want just a standalone plan. Maybe in a year, I don't even offer that as an option. And then that will solve that problem. But I also, I'm still early in this business. And if I can do a bunch of plans for people who want a one-time plan, I'll take, I don't mind the revenue and I don't mind the experience of going through all those plans and learning. And so.
Yeah. And you're getting a lot of at-bats. You're having a lot of clients come in. So, you've gotten, for what many advisors would be 4 years of education in 1 year, because you've worked with as many clients in a year as many advisors work with in 4. So it is a great learning opportunity to both hone your ability to sell the service, to communicate financial planning, to figure out your templated plans and how you deliver it.
Yep, absolutely.
That's another thing I hear is a lot of folks start and they say, I want to work with this type of client. And they start working with that type of client. And they're like, wow, those clients are nightmares to work with. I can't do that. I need to adjust.
Right.
Kind of nice if you don't have 50 ongoing relationships with that client persona when you decide to make that transition. So,
yep.
One thing to clarify, so you have the ongoing financial plan, it's $200 to $400 a month based on complexity. And then if you add in asset management, is it pure AUM or is it monthly fee plus AUM? How is that comprehensive service charged?
That gets a little bit complicated in every case except one. It's basically, as long as your AUM covers your $2,400 a year, then I'm not going to charge a monthly fee. Okay. So, and most of my clients are above that. One is under that. So they're basically, I'm charging them enough to get to the $2,400 a year.
So sort of a fee offset, like it's a minimum of $2,400. Exactly. They have over a certain amount of AUM. Then the fee basically goes down until after that point it cuts off.
Yep.
And then I was going to add, that's actually something we've talked about over at Advice Pay is how to help advisors with that. Because we see so many, with that calculation of, sort of this decreasing monthly fee based on AUM, and just to make that a little easier, because otherwise you're calculating it every quarter or whatnot. But it sounds like most of your clients that are looking for ongoing investment management are just over that point anyway. And are you somewhere around 1% AUM fee?
I am 1%.
Okay. Yep. So that makes the math easy. So over 240,000 in assets, they're just going to be on AUM.
Yep.
Okay.
And that's what most are. And I find that most who don't have enough assets, who, either they just want to do monthly fee or they just wanted to do a one-time plan and then check in.
So you mentioned Joe Messinger's course a couple of times. So we've had Joe on the show. Folks can go back and listen to learn more about his college pre-approval system, which I think is brilliant. I think it's such a great toolkit to be able to especially when you're starting a firm, to be able to go sell a service and sort of have a turnkey service. You mentioned not a lot of people, though, are necessarily signing up for just the college plan. Are you still finding that these wealth management, comprehensive financial planning clients do have college-bound kids? Like they're still fitting that niche. They're just not only looking for college planning?
Yep, absolutely. I should probably do the numbers, but almost all of my clients, I would say, have kids between the ages of 1 and 18. And so we're always talking about college planning, even though we're not doing the pre-approval system until they're like a junior or senior. It helps a lot just to have those conversations and to Yeah, I mean, definitely. I can't tell you how many clients, reach out to me and say, I saw that you work with families with college bound kids. We have an 11-year-old and a 13-year-old. We're thinking about college. And, so it's been a really easy fit for me, I would say. And again, because my kids are 16, 14, and 12.
Right.
I know the issues they're dealing with. And it's definitely been very helpful to just, families who come to me. In most cases, I know what their situation is going to look like, and I can help them, even if I'm not, specifically just doing like the pre-approval plan and things like that for them. So.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. And, sometimes people will ask, there's two kinds of niches. There's a marketing niche of like, we work with people with kids or something super high level where it's like, all right, how different is that? College bound kids though, like that, you do have a higher level of expertise around the college funding process. And I feel like that's the big difference between you and someone who says like, I work with families.
Right.
You can really dive in deep. And like I said, starting in that sort of, as they're getting into high school, really start that pre-approval process to help them to really hone in on those conversations and hopefully head off the issues before they become an issue, not after they sent the first kid to Ivy League and don't have any money for the second one kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like a lot of the power of Joe's program is just setting up the expectations way ahead of time. So, not waiting until your kid falls in love with Vanderbilt University and that's going to cost you $70,000 a year. Then you have the conversation and starting those conversations with the clients and them with their kids much earlier in the process, and just making that whole process, I think, a lot smoother for them.
So are you finding that a lot of folks that sort of in this college bound, they're just not quite to where their kids are in high school? Like you're working with a lot of folks and kids in elementary, middle school. And so you're not really implementing that pre-approval process with a lot of your clients. It's just coming.
Yep. I would say if I had to pick one demographic, it's most of my clients actually have middle school kids, which is kind of perfect because, if you come to me and your kid's a senior, there's not a lot I can do to help besides just doing the pure pre-approval. But I would say most come to me because they have middle school kids and something has sort of triggered them to start realizing like, oh my God, we're going to be sending these kids to college in the next 5 or 6 years or whatever it is.
So what type of work are you doing from a college planning perspective for people with a middle schooler? I mean, obviously you're not doing the full pre-approval process. Is it simply like, hey, we're just going to focus on, getting some money into a 529 plan, or is it more than that?
Yeah. I mean, it's not too much more than that. Like certainly it's having the conversation with the parents about, what is their college funding philosophy, which, you probably won't be surprised to find out that many spouses have not actually talked about that and they don't agree, right? Some people are like, my parents paid for my college. That's what I want to do for my kids. And other people are like, I paid my way through college. That's what I want my kids to do. And obviously everything in between. So having those conversations kind of early and getting both spouses on board is helpful. And then, sure, of course, we're projecting ahead based on how much they think they want to fund for the kids and getting them on track to be funded, and talking about all the other ways to save as well. It's not just 529s, but how the different ways of saving might impact financial aid and that kind of thing. So I would say most people don't understand anything about how financial aid works or how scholarships work, so just kind of giving them a look at what it looks like, what does need-based aid look like, and what do scholarships look like just for regular kids, and what are the actual costs of college, because most people don't understand that either. I find is helpful because most people don't know.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And like I said, there's probably this level where you're working with clients, like many advisors, with the amount of college or college planning knowledge that they give you in the CFP program, but really from middle school on is really where it starts building, and you're starting to implement more of those pieces that you just learn either from Joe or by doing it, which is really having those conversations, that when to involve the kids in the conversation and not just talking to the parents. All of those various components are so important.
Yep. Yeah. And most people, they don't understand like what, how does the FAFSA, is a 529 a parent asset, and it is, or, and how all the different assets they have will impact that. And it's helpful to know that ahead of time before you save everything in your child's name or something like that.
Right.
So
makes sense. So things are starting. I feel like the momentum ball, the snowball is starting to roll for you.
Definitely.
I know sometimes it's hard when you're in it to see it, but when we look at the growth and the number of clients you've been working with, starting to build that base of ongoing clients, I suspect a lot of those 30 plus one-time plans that have happened, some of those, 25, 30, 40% of those are going to come back over the next year or two and sign on for ongoing. So when you're really projecting out for the next the next 12 to 24 months, what are some of the big initiatives or big projects that you have in mind, the things that you want to be working on?
Yeah, I mean, certainly my focus is going to be trying to just focus more on ongoing planning, like you said, and right from the get-go, positioning that way. I for a while, I was offering like a quick start plan or that kind of thing, which I dropped that about maybe 3 or 6 months ago. And that was kind of a big, because for a while I liked that crutch of like, okay, I can still have people, small clients in for, just a quick start plan. And I was afraid to drop that because I didn't want to lose that revenue. But so dropping that was a big thing. And like I said, probably someday I will drop the one-time plan only and only take on ongoing clients. Hopefully in the next year or so, we'll see. My main focus is probably just getting more ongoing clients, getting more processes and systems in place. I just signed on with FA Bean Counters to do my bookkeeping now, which is great. I signed on for co-working space, which has been fantastic. So kind of building some of those.
Some of the infrastructure. Yeah.
Yeah. Some of the infrastructure to make my life a little bit easier is what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah. Bean Counters will sign on more people this quarter than they will the rest of the year because come tax time, everyone's like, oh, I said I was going to do my own bookkeeping and then I didn't open QuickBooks for 12 months.
Right. Right. It's been fantastic having a professional in charge of that piece. I'll say that for sure.
Too funny. We started that because that is the first thing that we find advisors want to outsource. Like when you make the whole list of things, for whatever reason, bookkeeping just always bubbles up to the top. It's not that expensive, but it is so frustrating to do it on your own. So,
right. Or just always nervous that I'm screwing something up, and like just to have professionals booking things the right way has been really great. So
for listeners that don't know, FA Bean Counters is part of the XYPN family of companies, but it's bookkeeping service specifically for advisors. So, and again, it was one of those felt like we could scale it better than a bunch of advisors doing it on their own or with random bookkeepers that maybe didn't know the financial services industry.
Yep.
How would you answer the question of, what are you building towards? Like, what is your vision? You've got the 3 kids, but, 4 or 5 years out, like they're all going to be in college. You're going to suddenly have all this time back, right?
Right.
What do you feel like you're building the business towards? Do you want to stay solo? Do you want to hire? Do you want to grow a $1 billion firm? Like, what's your vision for what this thing is going to become for you and your family?
Yeah, that's $1 million question that changes a bit from time to time. I think most likely I probably just want to stay solo. I like the lifestyle practice. I don't think I want the headaches that come with like a larger practice and other advisors and all of that. I do hope that I get to a point where I maybe have a paraplanner or an operations person or some part-time staff in that way. But probably still solo practitioner is what I see for the future.
Okay. So. Do you think that's more of just the size of business that you want it to be, or is it just the flexibility that you want to have, don't want to manage people? Like what drives that decision? Because it's something we all face as entrepreneurs. And I feel like we're not well equipped to answer the question of like, what do you want? And you're like, I don't know. So right. I guess, what drives your thinking there in terms of what you're trying to build?
Yeah. I mean, what mostly drives it is what do I like doing? And I like working with my clients. I like working on the plans. I like, getting to know them and being part of their lives without all the complication of, having employees and just all the complications that come with a bigger firm. So for me, it's probably just designing a lifestyle that I want to live, I guess, without making it too complicated. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's so hard. There's so much shoulding that happens amongst entrepreneurs of you should want to grow. You should want to be a big business. You should want to scale. You should want to create, enterprise value. And it's just like, you really shouldn't. You really get to the only should is build the business that supports your life and where you want to be today. That can change over time. And you may decide in 5 years, you're like, you know what? I want to bring on a couple of partners or I want to bring on a couple of associate advisors. you can always change your mind. I would say it's easier to grow than shrink, but you can theoretically shrink if you have to let people go, but not always ideal. But yeah, I always encourage advisors to stay really focused on what's the business you want to build that supports your great life, because I think you have just as much right to a great life as your clients do. And isn't that what we're in the business to do? So.
Right. No, absolutely.
So looking back, you're a year and a half in, you really took an intentional path, I feel like, of, getting your CFP and going to work for a couple of different firms, knowing you were going to launch your firm, launching into a niche. So you've taken a very intentional path. If you look back over that, either the time, of running your firm or even before then, if there's one piece of advice that you wish you could go back and give your younger self, sort of that thing you've learned that you wish you had known before, what do you think that one piece of advice would be? Yeah,
I would say for me, it would be everything takes longer than you think it will, and patience in general. Because I definitely thought when someone reached out to me through my website or talked to me or called me and said they want to work with me, I thought that meant next week we'll have a meeting, 2 weeks we'll be setting up the plan. And what that really means is probably the next couple months, I'm going to set up a meeting with you that will then take place a month from then. And maybe, so everything takes longer, and getting registered takes longer than you think, and getting set up, at TD Ameritrade and getting everything takes longer than you think it will, probably.
Fair enough. So, that is very true.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come on and share your story, career changing in from and then from stay-at-home mom to full-time financial planning business owner. It sounds like it's been a really fun ride, and just awesome to hear success that you're having and being able to be really intentional about building the business that works for you and your family. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
How much money do you need to launch your own firm? That's a question we've got at XY Planning Network hundreds, if not thousands of times. To answer it once and for all, we developed a free budget template that accounts for the many variables of your first year in business. Along with the template, successful XYPN members opened their books for us and shared how they did it, what they spent, and what they do differently. Our first year budget download is an incredibly valuable resource for anyone considering launching a firm of their own. Download it for free at www.xyplanningnetwork.com/budget. Be sure to join our VIP community at xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to hang out with other XYPN radio listeners, ask questions for future mailbag episodes with myself and Kitsis, and to finally find a community of like-minded financial advisors. Thanks so much for joining me today. We'll see you next time.
You're not alone, and you're not crazy. It's scary starting, building, and growing your own financial planning firm. And that's why we put together a free private community just for you, the Cutting Edge Financial Planner. Go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP or text XYPN Radio to 33344 and join a network of thousands ready to change the lives of Gen X and Gen Y clients.